Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. To the panelists and the viewers, thank you from Yale in Hollywood, from the Yale in Hollywood Fest. This is our final Q&A with the short filmmakers. We're doing documentary and experimental panorama. And if you've seen these films already, you know just how rich and exciting they are, unique in their field, and I think unique in their content as well. So we are absolutely thrilled to have this group of filmmakers and to have about 20 minutes to talk about these pieces of art. So my first question for the panelists is, what was the inspiration for this film? What was that original spark of creativity, of inspiration that enabled you to make this film and put it together in a practical sense? So let's start with Hayes. Please share about your film and what drove you to make it.
Yeah, hello guys. My name is Hayes and I'm currently an undergrad at Yale, and I was the director for the 4 seasons of Youth project. And the entire idea started off of how are we to live life in our 20s? So it was like an early life crisis. As in, I feel like youth is like a point in life where we're all like cars with a lot of gas and we have like all this energy, but we don't really know which destination to go to. So I wanted all that exhaustion, that kind of contemplation, all like I don't know, melted into film. And that was the initial spark, something that inspired the entire series. The one that was featured on the Yale in Hollywood Festival was called Void, and that was basically us trying to understand what youth means from the lens of autumn. So that kind of explains the existential, moody kind of sentiment from the film. So yeah, the inspiration came basically from an early life crisis of a 20-year-old.
That's great. Gaspar.
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me. So my film is A Date with History, which is about the arrest of a Black woman and a white man at a Miami motel in 1955, when you could not have cohabitation of the races, right? So Jim Crow was very much a fact of life in Miami at that time. And I was actually researching a different project. And I was reading microfilm. I was going through old copies of the Miami Herald. And if you've ever done that, you know that you tend to, your eye kind of wanders and things pop up. And I spotted a very small news item that reported this arrest. And the arrest occurred on Thanksgiving Day, 1955. And it listed the names of the man and the woman. It mentioned the fact that she was a teacher in what was then referred to as a Negro school, that she had lost her job. And I had kind of a visceral reaction to it. I found it sad, but also kind of outrageous, that people could have their lives laid bare in this fashion. And then I got really interested in the story. And as I dug deeper, I got really interested in finding out who they were. And we did, to some degree, actually find out who they were. But one of the things I found out was that Jet magazine, which was then a national magazine in its early days, actually picked up that story from the Miami Herald and ran it in Jet magazine, again, with their names. And so, to me, it was kind of an exploration into that era of Jim Crow, but also a history of policing in a way, which is relevant to the present day. So to me, it was a 60-year-old story, or almost a 70-year-old story, that kind of resonated in the present moment. So I just kind of fell into it that way.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight. Marina. Oh, I think you're still on mute.
She might be one. There I go. Yeah, I'm going to toss this to my colleague, Julie Flanders. She and I have been involved producing and creating events and artistic projects since graduating from Yale. We were roommates together, and I helped produce a piece that she wrote, a poem from a collection of poetry. So Julie, speak of your inspiration.
Well, Doubts is really written for the inner voice that tortures all of us, especially artists, people who create work that, has to move into the world. And it's really just about the inner bully, the inner voice of doubt, and how it can really be very toxic for us in terms of, putting forward what we have to say in the world and what we can do to make the world a better place by actually expressing the better nature in ourselves. And so it's really just, that voice finding its way. And I storyboarded it with a fine artist who had never done animation before. So for all of us, it was a first time event. And it was a poem. A lot of people find it difficult to access poetry, to really understand it or like it. And so it's a very accessible poem. And we had created it for an evening, a salon, where there were going to be other more challenging poems. And we figured that one would appeal to everyone and be animated and be a way in for people. So that's kind of what the origin point was. And we were very surprised because the response to the piece was so strong, and I knew that was my inner voice in there, but I started to really hear from other people that this is a pretty universal experience, especially for artists.
That's so neat. That is so neat to hear. Miriam.
Well, speaking of doubts, I've made a lot of short documentaries, but I had never made one without a client and a budget and a deadline. And so when I was speaking to Rabbi Hale, who, by the way, is also a Yale, class of '84, a few years ago, and he was telling me about the work that he does with this particular set of Torah scrolls that were saved in Czechoslovakia during the Holocaust, that he restores them. They are dispersed on permanent loan to communities around the world. I just blithely said, "Oh, that sounds like a film." I had also just been to a film festival where a friend of mine stood up in front of an audience and answered questions about her film, which I thought was great. And I thought, wow, I'd like to do that. So here I am doing that.
That's great. I like that can-do attitude. Kay, please share about the inspiration for your film.
Hi, I was the cinematographer for 4 Seasons of Youth, and I worked with Hayes. So Hayes and I have worked on other films in the past as well. And it was the main inspiration was how it's okay to feel things as we grow, because we spent like our late teens and early 20s together. And I thought it would be interesting to sort of navigate those maybe minor or major events that influence us in that young adult stage in our life.
Thank you. Oscar.
Hi, yeah, so my project One Fish, Two Fish was kind of based out of restrictions, both COVID related and also school related. So I'm a master's student at USC, and so this was a school project that we had, and basically gave us a kind of set of rules and that we had to live within, and then also the world was giving us another set of rules that we also had to live within. So it was kind of based out of both of those things. And yeah, I think for the most part, I was thinking about this today. I was saying, where was the initial idea? Where did it come from? And I think it's just kind of, it's that idea of happiness is only real when shared, and living together is better than living alone, all that kind of stuff. And so my project, just I guess for reference, is about a young woman who grows a boyfriend out of a plant. So yeah, I think that's kind of where that came from.
Thank you. Patrice, please tell us about your film.
Sure. Well, Hannah, thanks for having this panel. And of course, I'm glad to be back in the Yale and Hollywood Festival. It's my second film here. The first one was Saturday Grace. So glad to be back. And yes, I'm Patrice Bowman. I am the writer, director, executive producer, and also editor and colorist for Under the Sun, After the Wind. Pretty much a short film about a woman who is isolated in her room, as a lot of us were, and maybe some of us still are, because of COVID-19, and just her experiencing the news of the disease and also police brutality and how it mentally affects her. And of course, at the end, it becomes a question of, while there is all of the evil in the world that she can see through her phone that eventually projects into her room, there's also, of course, the more positive possibility of people working together to enact positive change. So in terms of making Under the Sun, After the Wind, I think that I also made that film as a restriction as well. It was, one person, one location, mainly because I wanted to minimize the amount of risk involved with making a film during the COVID lockdown. That was, I believe, like with the official shoot day and also like a practice day, it was like 1.5 day shoot in January of 2021. So I made that with limitations, but I also felt that I need to make some sort of story to communicate the anxieties, but also some hope that I was feeling during this time while I was being isolated. And of course, the big part of this story is that in the voiceover of the character, she's adapting parts of the book of Ecclesiastes from the Bible. It's a piece of text that I believe that was pretty relevant in terms of discussing some very big parts of like the meaning of life. What does it mean to live in an unjust world? What should you do? And ultimately the message is, you have to do what is right. So that sort of were the main things that were going through my head for watching that film, just needing to be productive during lockdown and pulling from a biblical text that resonated with me.
Wow, that is wonderful. So I think everyone has spoken. If you haven't, please let me know. But I think that is all of us. My next question is what you want audiences to take from this. These were so wonderfully experimental. They were, again, wholly unique, as I said before. And I would love to hear the impression that you would like to leave the audience with, or any reflections on the film after that you would like the audience to know. I leave that to you. But Marina, if you could please start us off.
Well, again, Julie, having written the text, will have more to say on this, but the takeaway that I would hope everyone has from our animated short is that we all understand what a doubt is, and we're all plagued by them at various times. And the choice is, do you let them win, or do you kindly push them aside? So I think the idea that it's an experience that we all are familiar with, but that there is hope beyond doubt. So that's the takeaway I would suggest might be great. But Julie, what would you have to say?
Yeah, I heard a wonderful quote recently that we all have to go through fear in this life, but it's only when you add doubt to fear that you really suffer. And I want the film to be an inspiration to people to have the courage to keep expressing what's important to them, and to remind themselves to love themselves, and to be true to themselves, and to have a more fulfilling experience in their lives and in the world, especially at these uncertain times, to remember that none of us are alone. We're all having this human experience together.
Thank you. Gaspar, what do you think? What do you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I think our goal was contained in our approach. I mean, stylistically, this was a little bit of a departure for us. It's a documentary. We never bring people to screen. Our interviews actually are all under picture, and we have reenactments of a sort. Not, But I think the goal was really to try to bring the viewer, the audience, into that motel room, and into the shoes of those people, and have it be a personal connection with their plight, as well as a conscious one. And I think, again, for me, it's a film about, in some ways, it's kind of a film about policing, and the conversations that we're having now around issues of social justice and what have you. That's a very long conversation, and I think if you don't appreciate that, I don't think you can have the conversation. If you think the conversation just started 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, and our film again goes back to the 1950s, and an era that a lot of people would say, well, but we're well past that. But I think the film kind of asks you to consider, how past it are we? Because I think the episode in the film would resonate, and has resonated with a contemporary audience. So I think we would very much like it to help that conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Hayes and Kay, what are your thoughts?
I guess I'll begin. I think the main thing that I wanted the audience to take away, especially audiences who are in my generation, people who are in their 20s, was just simply like a question, because I think we live in an era where we're saturated with answers. We all feel this obsession and this need to make a statement to the world. And I think especially with people in my generation, I think there is like this lack of humility in like simply asking a question of, what is the good life? How are we to live our lives? If there is a void that we feel, how are we to fill it? And I think it is that sort of approach in life that I wanted people to kind of see through this film. So I think that would be my answer.
Yes, and my takeaway would be that wherever you are in life, that it's okay and there is hope, and then we can all learn to move forward from it. So making this film actually helped me deal with the void that I felt as an undergrad student. And so I just hope that it would do the same for the audience. And in terms of style, since our film was an experimental film, it really helped me navigate through the creative expressions that I could take with my camera. And it was really fun just trying to figure out what kind of shots that we can make to try to express what we're trying to say, like the message that we were trying to send.
Thank you. Miriam, what are your closing thoughts?
Well, most of our audiences have been Jewish, of course, for this film. And for them, they experience a sense of deep connection, I think. Many people don't have the opportunity to get close to a Torah scroll, which, if you haven't seen the film, or if you're not Jewish, it's the first 5 books of the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, 5 books of the Old Testament, if you like. They're written on parchment, and they're written the same way they've been written for thousands of years. And the scribe who restores scrolls in the film is using the same tools and techniques and materials that have been used for thousands of years. So for people who are familiar with that, to get that close to a Torah scroll, as you do in the film, is very moving. For people who are not familiar with that, I think the sense of continuity that all religions embody is something that anyone can identify with, and you can see that people of all religions have these things in common.
Thank you so much. Oscar.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear everyone else's answers. And I was thinking, what's the takeaway for mine? And I figured the only thing that I really would want anyone watching my project to take away from, or to leave with, is a smile. And that was kind of the whole idea in the first place. I think just came from that. yeah, so that honestly, that's it. Just a smile.
Well, we've certainly needed those in the past couple of years, to be sure. So that's fantastic. Well, Patrice, I believe you will end our Q&A. So please share with us your reflections on your film and wrap up this entire Q&A session.
Sure. Well, in terms of Under the Sun After the Wind, to echo what some other people have said, I do say that even though there are a lot of intense images within the film in terms of COVID-19 and police brutality, there is also a message of hope again, because it really is about people who understand that there is an issue to solve in our, like in, I guess, within the United States, but really like worldwide, even though my film specifically focuses on the United States. And, you know, it's about the power of people coming together for a righteous cause. So I think that's the main takeaway of the film. It's something that I had to cling on to because 2020, 2021, very intense years for multiple reasons. I'm sure anyone can agree with that. But it's also a film that I want people to watch and know that, you know, I think that there's a lot of conversations around like social media, because I mentioned that because my character in the film uses her cell phone to look at all the news, both good and bad. And it's really something where I don't want to just demonize and say social media is really bad and phones are bad. I think it's really just a matter of a balance of understanding that social media is going to bring both the worst and the best of humanity, and also knowing when to focus on the good and also to step back and engage with people in real life, whether it's just through friendships or through community service, things like that. So those are kind of the two main takeaways from my film.
Well, what a fitting note on which to end. Thank you for that wisdom. I think we all need to remember that periodically. I know I do. Well, thank you. That is my final thought. Thank you all so much. These films were a delight, truly, and I think speak so highly to the creativity of Yale filmmakers. And thank you for making such unique pieces of art that we can all enjoy and continue to enjoy through the weekend at least. So please, we hope to see you next year. We really do. Thank you for your time this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And please enjoy the rest of the festival and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you everyone who is attending and watching from Yale and Hollywood.